Mr. Speaker, September is Suicide Prevention Month, a time for our nation to raise awareness about the persistent scourge of suicide. Tens of thousands of Americans die each year purposefully by their own actions. Our neighbors and our friends, our sons and our daughters. And too often, they are the men and women who have served our country honorably in the United States military. An estimated 22 veterans commit suicide every day in our country. That is one life lost every 65 minutes. 1 year ago, we came together in this chamber during a special bipartisan order to send a clear message that this epidemic of veteran suicide must end. Now, 1 year later, the fight isn't over and more work needs to be done. Tonight, we demonstrate our ongoing support for the individuals, organizations, and agencies devoted to preventing the epidemic of veteran suicide. And we challenge the VA, the Department of Defense, and our fellow lawmakers to do more. We are failing in our obligation to do right by those who have served so honorably. And finally, we send a message to military families who've experienced this tragedy. Your family's loss is not forgotten. We will work to stop this epidemic. We work for the memory of your loved ones. You know, we hear countless stories from members of Congress in this very body of veterans who reach out to our offices, sometimes as a last resort, as they are facing or contemplating suicide. And I'm proud to say that many members of this body have done what it has taken to help those individuals recover and stay in touch. Last year, I shared with you the story of a young veteran in my district, Sergeant Daniel Somers. Sergeant Somers was an Army veteran of 2 tours in Iraq. Diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury and PTSD, Sergeant Somers ultimately took his own life after struggling with the VA bureaucracy and not getting the help he needed in time. Together with the Somers family, we've worked to prevent veteran suicide and improve much-needed access to mental health care for our veterans. We recently developed the Classified Veterans Access to Care Act to ensure that all veterans, including those with classified experiences, get immediate access to mental health services in the appropriate care setting. The House Veterans Affairs Committee included this legislation in a larger veterans package, and we expect it to be on the floor before the end of the year. While this is an important step in supporting our veterans, we have much more work to do. Your comment and your message to veterans of don't give up is one that I think we must all repeat every day, not just in words, but in our actions as members of Congress to continue to reform the VA system and send a clear message to veterans that we won't give up either in reforming the system and taking care of them. You know, earlier this evening, I shared the story of Sergeant Daniel Somers. The VA failed Sergeant Somers, and we've since learned that the VA has failed thousands of other veterans through gross mismanagement and delays in access to care. Veterans at the Phoenix VA and VA facilities across the country were placed on secret lists and had to wait months before seeing a doctor. The Department of Veterans Affairs Office of Inspector General's final report on the Phoenix VA healthcare system, which was released last month, confirms that the Phoenix VA, housed in my district, left 3,500 veterans at the risk of never receiving care. Additionally, 1,400 veterans on the official electronic waiting list were left waiting for unacceptably long periods of care. At least 20 veterans who failed to receive timely or appropriate care passed away. Mr. Speaker, this is immoral, un-American, and it puts our veterans at risk. But in Arizona, we're not idly waiting for Washington to take action. We're taking action ourselves. In Phoenix, we've established a working group of community providers, veteran service organizations, and the local VA to work together to improve access to services. We also recently co-hosted our first Veterans First Clinic, which brought together community providers, the Phoenix VA, and over 20 veteran-serving organizations to help veterans in a variety of ways. Approximately 400 veterans and their families attended and got the care that they earned and that they deserve. So these are examples of the good that results when we set aside partisanship and focus instead on putting veterans first to help meet their needs. Mr. Speaker, I want to share a story from my district. Last month, a local veteran came to our district office. He came to ask for help with his claims and for help navigating the VA. After meeting with my social work staff for 2 hours, Peter told one of my caseworkers that he had thoughts of suicide, and he had the ability to carry out those thoughts. In fact, he said the only thing keeping him from doing so was his daughters. So our office met with Peter for an additional 2 hours, listening to him share his feelings and focusing on solutions and next steps. We shared with him our Veterans Resource Guide, which let him know about available community programs and organizations dedicated to supporting veterans with services that range from mental health treatment to financial assistance. Peter told us he had no idea there were so many organizations that support local veterans, and he left our office that day feeling better than when he had arrived. Mr. Speaker, I spoke with him personally just a few days later. He told me he'd never heard of an office that would respond and care about his suicidal ideation, his depression, and his needs. I'm grateful that Peter came to our office. I'm even more grateful that we were able to help him. So since meeting with Peter and other veterans in our district, we've released a Veterans Resource Guide for Congressional District 9 in Arizona, a comprehensive 27-page document that provides local veterans with detailed information about community resources that are available to them. We hope that this resource guide will be replicated in districts across the country. Mr. Speaker, the issue of veteran suicide and the systemic problems in the VA system require a substantial local and national effort. My colleagues here today believe, as I believe, that no one who comes home after the country should ever feel like he or she has nowhere to turn. So in response to the VA crisis, Congress recently passed and the President signed into law the Veterans Access to Care Through Choice, Accountability, and Transparency Act. This legislation makes needed reforms to the VA healthcare system and will ensure that Arizona veterans get access to the care that they've earned. The Veterans Access to Care Through Choice, Accountability, and Transparency Act builds on our work to address the crisis in Phoenix by allowing veterans who've been waiting for medical care for more than 30 days to receive care from non-VA doctors. It authorizes the VA to fire senior managers who knew about these cover-ups across the country. It reviews scheduling systems and technology so that fewer veterans slip through the cracks when seeking care. It provides resources for more physicians and medical staff to work in VA hospitals around the country. And it creates an independent commission to investigate the Veterans Administration to find out what went wrong and evaluate access to care throughout the VA healthcare system. Mr. Speaker, this legislation was an important step forward, but more action is required. And the first step is speedy and effective implementation of this important bill. I urge the VA and agencies locally who are working with the VA to speed the implementation of this important legislation and show a change of culture at the VA. You know, we all believe that veterans deserve the best possible care. Carl McLaughlin, a 38-year-old Army veteran, committed suicide on December 19th of 2013. Carl had been stationed in Bosnia, and he was released from the Army on a medical discharge in 2004. So starting in 2006, Carl was treated at the Phoenix VA. But as time went on, it became increasingly difficult for Carl to see his doctor. And according to Carl's mother, Terry, at the time of his death, Carl was waiting to hear back from the Phoenix VA to have his medications adjusted and to see his doctor. Carl suffered from recurring pain caused by shoulder injury, severe hearing loss, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. His depression worsened over time. Terry, Carl's mom, told us, and I quote, "The last time I saw Carl was a few days before his death. He looked really depressed. And I asked him if he had a doctor's appointment scheduled, because I know he'd been waiting over 4 weeks for a call back from the doctor's office. He said no, He was still waiting. He called them the next day 6 times. He left 3 messages. He was put on hold and hung up on the other 3 times. This problem of calling and being hung up on and not getting calls back had been going on for over 1 to 2 years. Terry asked us to share her son's story in the hope that his tragedy doesn't happen to another family. So recently I co-sponsored legislation called the Clay Hunt Suicide Prevention for American Veterans Act. This bill reviews mental health staffing requirements and increases the ability of the VA to recruit and train psychiatrists. Congress should pass this legislation this year to make it easy for veterans like Carl to see a behavioral health specialist. Mr. Speaker and members, I want to thank my colleagues who joined me this evening. Our thoughts are with the families who've lost a loved one. Each of us can do something to raise awareness, to be that light for a struggling veteran community. Businesses can display signs to let veterans know that help is always available to them. Mental health professionals can volunteer with organizations like Give an Hour to provide free counseling to veterans, their family members, and active duty members and their families. And we can all learn to recognize the signs of crisis by visiting veteranscrisisline.net and then reaching out to the veterans in our lives. Here in Congress, we can do more. We need a VA that provides real and meaningful help to veterans in need, that put veterans first, and works aggressively with community providers to improve the quality and accessibility of care. We need a VA that is transparent and open to restore the trust and credibility it has lost. We who enjoy our freedom every day, thanks to the sacrifice of our military service members, we must all step up to end the epidemic of veteran suicide. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time.